That degree of difficulty doesn't help very much if they're accumulating, multiplying that by very low judges' scores. Our first dive here is an inward dive pike performed by Corey Schrock from Concord, 3 hours due north of Indianapolis in Elkhart, Indiana. Corey, I believe perhaps a second time showing here at the state meet.
Highest score, an 8, a low score of 6 for a total of 30.75.
I'll interject some information I've reviewed over how the judging panel has gone today. I've been really excited to see the scoring range that the panel has offered. On a dive that's really good, you'll see incredible numbers that reflect that performance. And on a dive that's lacking, you'll see the truth show up on the board.
Ross Dreyer from Avon, the junior, completes his dive.
It's the reverse dive in the pike position, and a very large, probably more than 6 or so athletes that are going to give us a tremendous show this afternoon.
Had to throw the score from Judge 7 up when the scores, Judge 3 rather, scored a 7. First time the scores were posted, it read 0.0, and that takes his total up to 35.70.
It's a very nice back 1.5 somersault with 1.5 twist. Matthew Veek performing this dive here. He's a senior. I believe he was in the top 4 or 5 in the state meet last year, and he's finishing his last 3 rounds with a very solid, promising top 5 finish again.
Veek from Heritage Christian, his score 53.75, a couple of 7.5s, Judge 7 and 8.0, 364.80 through round 9. For the senior from Heritage Christian, Jason Spurlock of Crawfordsville will be next.
Jason just did a tremendous job on this inward 1.5 pike. It was about the highest inward optional we've seen in the contest today. He went a little bit short of vertical for the entry. It's preferred that the athlete comes straight up and down to find a body line for the finish.
Level scores 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 7.0, 7.0, and a couple of 7.5s total for around 49.20. 329.90 for Jason Spurlock. Casey Johnson of Indian Creek is next.
Jason's a very strong diver. Again, a great athlete. He's got a lot of degree of difficulty and a lot of multiple somersaults in each direction.
Indian Creek with a champion last week in high school wrestling at 103 pounds.
Casey Johnson, maybe 103 pounds himself. A very slick figure on the diving board. He's thin, he's wiry. He's grown a few inches from last year, but he surprised us last year showing up in the top 5 as a freshman. And in 2 years at this state meet, this gentleman has not yet missed a single dive.
Pride and joy of Trafalgar scoring 5 times at the 7.0 level, 6.5 for Judge 7 and a 7.5 Judge 1. Total for around 46.20, giving him a 365-plus total. Next up, Hank Dussard from Bedford North Lawrence, a sophomore.
Okay, we have a reverse 1.5 pike. It's a difficult skill. We saw one reverse 2.5 in the contest earlier, and it was performed pretty well by Ross Dreyer. This is a reverse 1.5 pike. Most of the athletes in the contest will choose this one over the reverse 2.5, which is highly complex. The reverse 1.5 pike itself is difficult, and this skill here, Hank was able to make it around, but he lost form. He bent his knees.
From a 4.5 to a 6.0, a 37.20 the total for the round, 324.25 for Hank Dussard from Bedford North Lawrence. Next up, Kyle Frabel from Homestead.
Kyle may have a reverse 2.5 here. Oh, this looks like a front twister. Very nice. A great ride off the diving board. Kyle, whose brother Daniel, I believe a state contender here from just a couple seasons ago. He's a second-year diver. He's a senior in high school. He's a second-year high school diver. He's got a tremendous amount of degree of difficulty, great board work, and a great mature jump off the diving board for somebody with that limited level of experience in the sport.
A low of 6, a high of 7.5. Judge 1 and Judge 5 with a 7.5 for that young man. Next up, Jerry Schaefer from Bremen High School, also a senior.
It's a lot of seniors, obviously, that show up in this finals group. Final chance to get a top 8 medal or respectable top 16 finish here in the state of Indiana. These seniors usually have their game face on. Starting with an inward dive pike, Jerry was a bit back. He went away from the diving board instead of up from the diving board. He wasn't able to get his chest to vertical, and his legs dropped a little short of vertical.
Total of 27 gives him a total after 9 rounds of 312.05. Next up, Brody Carter from Valparaiso, a senior.
Valparaiso is often very well represented here in the men and women contests at the state meet. Bill Chappell has been coaching in Valparaiso for certainly prior to my diving days, and still today has a very competitive year-round, if not year-round, at least some activity in the off-season to help prepare his athletes for the challenges of the day.
Waiting on the scores for Brody Carter of Valparaiso at 299.60 coming into the round. A pretty consistent dive between 6 and 6.5. His total 33.15, bumping him up to 332.75. Next up, Plainfield junior Tyler Klingerman.
Brody put together a fair front 1.5 pike. It was a little bit lackluster on the come out. He let his legs fall out instead of pressing out into a straight line to show a finish. So the dive went a little shorter vertical, and in these final rounds, it's really going to impress the judges if the athletes take it to the hole, so to speak, in finishing their dive.
Klingerman in the top 8 coming in with a score of 333.15, waiting on his scores now for the Plainfield junior after his first dive of the round.
A very high-scored front full twisting 1.5, and duly so. This was a tremendous jump by Tyler, and he moved into a great mid-air twisting position, finished well over the diving board when he was ready to pike over and line his dive up. And Tyler enters the water with a rip, a clean entry without any splash and a tearing sound once he enters the water. That's made by moving the arms under the water shortly after impacting.
382.65, a good round for Tyler Klingerman. Jimmy Page is next from Crown Point.
This one could score very well. It's a front 1.5 pike. Jimmy's a beautiful diver. He's #1 ranked athlete coming into the final rounds here. He's got great balance, jump, and posture at the end of the board. And he points his toes, enters the water as clean as any athlete in the contest.
How about Judge 5 giving him a 9.5, a couple of the 9s from 2 and 4. Big round for him, 44.20, 393.20. Jimmy Page atop the leaderboard. Next up, Ingram Cade from Carmel.
Ingram's doing a nice job. I believe he's a junior in high school. Did I get that correctly?
Yep, you did.
He's been at it for a while. He's been involved in year-round club diving. He's been very consistent today. Whatever he may lack in height, he makes up for in accuracy.
Couple of 6s, a handful of 6.5s for the round, 33.15, a 306.25 total. Next up, Rylan Reidenauer from Lebanon, who was a senior.
Ryland's a surprise in today's contest. He's seated comfortably in the top 4 going into finals here. Ryland's a beautiful diver. He's got great form, sequence, and grace in the air. Occasionally, he doesn't quite finish his skill vertical enough to earn the big money from the judging panel, but today he seems to be finding his flow and doing exactly that.
Yeah, he came in the top 8 and scored well there at 8.5, at 8.0, a couple of 7.5s, a high-scoring 33.75 round for him. His total now 375.50. Justin Kramer, the junior from Michigan City, up next.
Michigan City, not often represented here in the diving event here at the state meet. This young man seems to be putting together very solid. Justin's had a consistent performance today. He's certainly a good athlete. You could see that in his movement patterns, and he's certainly starting to figure out this sport of diving. He had a little bit of an unorthodox connection there. He touched near his knees instead of over the tops of his toes. Could indicate a little bit of lack of flexibility in the hamstrings, which is often a handicap here for a male diver. They're just not as flexible in some cases as the female divers.
Split evenly pretty much, 5.5s and 5.0, 25.60, 308.75, Justin Kramer. Next up, Zach Robbins from Huntington North, the senior, coming into the round with a total of 297.40.
Now, this is an unusual dive selection for a final round here. Front dive pike, he did well enough. He jumped high, presented the dive, went in a little bit short of vertical. But at a 1.3 degree of difficulty, it doesn't offer a lot of opportunity for forward movement.
5s and 6s, a low-scoring 20.15 round. His total 317.55. Wrapping up the first round from Carmel, senior Evan Crowder.
I've been very impressed by Evan today. He not only has a great board presence about him and a very successful competitive series of dives that he showed us today, but he is smooth. He has a great range of movement in his shoulders and hips. He has good flexibility. He shows good form, keeps fingers and toes together. He's put together not only an impressive, but an aesthetically pleasing, a pretty diving performance here today.